Hi, I'm Lenny Benson. I'm a professor at New York Law School, and my specialty is immigration law. This summer, when the evacuation of Afghan nationals began, I reached out to Immigrant ARC and signed on as a senior fellow to help design a response to the many thousands of Afghans who will be arriving in the United States and those who are still outside the country. Working with the nonprofit organizations, lawyers, schools, community organizations, and government offices that all work together through the Immigrant Art Network, we're trying to develop good tools to help providers provide high quality, informed legal services to Afghans.
What kind of tools does IRIC have?
Well, we're trying to develop robust tools that go beyond maybe what would be obvious to some people of assisting people in seeking asylum. So I'll come back to asylum in a moment. But this population of Afghan nationals here in the United States have a couple of other concerns. First, many were separated from their families, and they're very concerned about families still in Afghanistan or in other countries around the world. And so most resettlement agencies and nonprofit organizations do not do overseas immigration work. So one of the tools that we've been working on is a questionnaire that will allow lawyers, volunteers, nonprofits, community organizations to do an intake interview with someone here in the United States to see if there's paths to entry to the United States through a variety of means, including non-immigrant visas like student visas or work petitions, as well as slower but very possible paths to status here in the United States through employment or family sponsorship. Now, the main purpose of our intake form, which was developed by working with a lot of other nonprofit organizations, was to expand it beyond the focus on immediate humanitarian protections such as asylum. While many of the people who managed to be evacuated from the United States have a temporary status in the United States called parole, that parole status ends in 2 years, at least theoretically. We do expect the government to extend it. But a parole status is not a permanent status, and it is not a status that allows you to sponsor other family members. So many of the Afghans will be seeking asylum, and the intake questionnaire does provide the basic questions to help an immigration attorney assess whether an individual who is physically present in the United States meets the definition of someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution or harm based on one of the protected grounds in our refugee definitions. Let me make something clear. Many of the people who are evacuated by the US government do have some possibility of claiming they are a refugee. But once you enter the United States with parole or a temporary visa, you have to actually seek asylum. It's a different legal process. And so our questionnaire helps make that clear and understandable to both the user of the form and the person you're interviewing.
What are some tips and tricks for using the form?
Well, the form is an interactive form right now using the Google platform. We will share a PDF copy of the questionnaire on our website, but we're also happy to help coordinate with any organization by contacting Kristen Wagner, that's KWAGNER, at immigrantarc.org. Kristen is our pro bono legal services coordinator. If you use the Google version of the form, it has some logic built into it. So while the form is quite lengthy with comprehensive questions about every possible path to immigration status, if it's obvious in the interview that a particular query about education, skills, employment isn't going to be fruitful, the user of the form can be instructed to skip questions and move on. It also tips and tricks about using the form. We've created a really detailed guide for the interviewer. And so if you use our form, we also have written background information for you about why we're asking the question, what the purpose of the question is, and we're also happy to do more training or individual queries that you might have if you want to go deeper into understanding some of the employment-based visas or some of the options for people overseas.
And what happens after an intake is completed using the form?
Well, the form right now populates a drive that Immigrant Art controls. It can be, of course, moved to an internal drive in a law firm or to a nonprofit. We were hoping by keeping that information confidential, we could also gather community statistics. Therefore, we could do better advocacy with our legislators, our school boards, our employers, talking about the number of Afghans present in our community who qualify for certain kinds of immigration statuses or potential have job skills that may be needed in our community. But if you don't want to use the form as populated with Immigrant Art, you can use it for yourself, and then you'll have a good intake assessment that an experienced immigration lawyer should be able to look at and know immediately what course of action he or she can take to complete representation for that individual.
Thank you.